You're listening to Africa Business Radio, where you get up-to-date insights on the Africa business landscape. Log on to www.africabusinessradio.com. Your favorite shows are available as podcasts. Download them on our website and mobile app. Africa Business Radio, towards a profitable Africa.
Experts agree that human trafficking involves recruiting, harboring, or transporting people into a situation of exploitation, using various methods which may include violence, deception, or coercion that forces the victims to work against their will. Simply put, trafficking is a process of enslaving people and putting them into a situation of exploitation with no way out. For more on this, stay tuned to Stricken, your favorite weekly show. The show where we decipher how a combination of everyday factors could strike a person and affect their mental health well-being. The show where we also seek to connect those that are stricken to practical solutions that would improve their symptoms and mental well-being. I am Ahmed Bolaji as usual. I will be taking you through the journey from stricken to straightened. If you love what we're doing and you're enjoying the show, you can join the journey, connect with us, and support us on WhatsApp numbers +234-905-24-31172 and +44-750-864-8367. On Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Africa Business Radio, and on Twitter at Africa Biz Radio. Let's hear what Griselda has to say.
In Cape Town, the Western Cape, in the District 6. And in that, we met a lot of people that came through, and I met a friend that comes from a normal household, no environment, but she was just one of those girls that would go out clubbing, and she used to come and hang out with us. And then she left for Johannesburg to go and study at UJ. And then I turned 18, and then the state orphan house was like, okay, so you're 18 now, and you didn't do much with your life while you were here, where the opportunity got, and you gotta go because it's too overcrowded. And then I remember her being in Johannesburg, which was with my friend, and I called her up and I said, look, things are really bad for me and I really want to change. Cape Town, I don't want to be here anymore. I just want to be out. And you've seen where we stay. Can you help me out? And, your parents are great and you in Joburg and you probably have your own place. Can you help me? I promise I will do anything. And she said, yeah, of course. You come through, get yourself here and you can do that. And I got to Johannesburg a day and a half later in Park Station. She picked me up and I was so excited to see her because she was a friend to me. That's one thing I knew. And she let me in the house and just walking through comfortably, and she's like, this is going to be a room. It was very, very empty. And I was like, okay, you didn't hook me up with anything or something? And she's like, man, this is Joburg. You can find something in 2 days' time. And I said, okay, I'm just going to pass out for a minute and get some rest. And she's like, oh, okay, cool, no problem. I felt safe. I felt okay. And I said, okay. And that was the last time I saw her. In that couple of hours, it didn't take long. A couple of guys walked in. First thing I felt was a punch in my face, which really shocked everything in me. But not the punch, but I think I was confused what's happening. And the more I felt confused, the more smacks and kicks and punches I got. And while that was happening, I was being undressed. And in my mind, the only thing I was thinking is like, where is she? What's going on? And the more I thought about that, the more I went numb. In my mind, I just saw her. And I was getting angry and angry and angry. But the more I get angry, the more I felt I was getting helpless, because they tied up my hands, they undressed me, and then they covered my eyes with sellotape. And that's the only sound I had in my head. That was it. And then for a whole couple of 2 weeks, all I could do was smell and hear the sound of money and men coming in, about, I don't know how many in a day. That went on for about 2 weeks, because I counted days. And then I was exchanged with another younger girl. When they grabbed me at my neck and dragging me out around the night, and they kicked me out, and she was still screaming. I could hear she's being punched too. I got on the street and I was completely dirty. Didn't think about going to the police station because I smelled like drugs. First place I went to was in the Chuck area. Did what I did there sexually. And for me, it was just to get drugs so I can get away from the pain and anger. So at the escort agency I was working at in Port Elizabeth, I was pregnant with Summer. I was pregnant with Summer for like 6 months. And then they said it's not acceptable. And so that forced it into abortion. And as I lay there, seeing my unborn baby's legs in a sink, I just knew something was going to change. I was held in the house for 2 weeks, but it held me in bondage for 8 years. My so-called friend used the money for me being trafficked for her university and her education. This person, I see them all the time, and they see me all the time. They see the work that I do all the time. So now I work for an organization called Embrace Dignity. The word really captured me on dignity. Who's embracing my dignity? And so I wanted to find out what do they do. So I go ahead and find a lot of fulfilling when I tell a story on my story. I think the most fulfilling part is when people really have heard the story and come back to me and say thank you so much. I mean, you have said something that really helped me. It might not have been on human trafficking, but it really opened my eyes that it could happen right next door and it could happen right with me. So it's a very, very beautiful organization, just going back and feeling safe in the organization and knowing that my dignity is being restored.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on board the flight that takes you from stricken to straightened. We are seconds from takeoff. We ask that you please fasten your earpiece into your eardrum and please log on to africabusinessradio.com to avoid being distracted. Thank you for choosing Africa Business Radio. Enjoy this cerebral journey.
Confused with people smuggling, which is an illegal movement of people across international borders for a fee. On arrival, the smuggled person is free. Human trafficking is, however, different. It may sometimes take the form of people smuggling at inception, but the trafficker is moving the people for exploitation, as they won't be free on arrival. Trafficking can also occur without crossing any borders. Human trafficking occurs at national level or even within one's community. People can be trafficked for many different forms of exploitation, such as prostitution, begging, forced labor work, forced criminality, domestic servitude, forced marriage, and even forced organ removal. Remember, any of these could be achieved not just by force, but also by deception. So there are two tools that are being used: force and deception. Contrary to a common misconception, People don't necessarily have to be transported across borders for trafficking to take place. Trafficking can take place in a city against a resident of that city. The United Nations Office for Drugs and Crime estimates that 51% of identified victims of trafficking are women, 28% are children, and 21% are men. 72% of people exploited in sex industry are women. 63% of identified traffickers were men and 37% women. 43% of victims are trafficked domestically within national borders. In Nigeria, the Trafficking in Persons Prohibition Law Enforcement Administration Act 2003 established the National Agency for the Prohibition of Traffic in Persons and Other Related Matter, otherwise known as NAPTIP. NAPTIP is the principal organization created by the Nigerian government to combat trafficking. This is to fulfill its international obligations under the Protocol to Prevent, Suppress, and Punish Trafficking in Persons, especially women and children. In addition, aside the Constitution of Nigeria, which protects the fundamental rights of Nigerians, there is also the Violence Against Person Prohibition Act 2015, the Criminal and Penal Codes of Nigeria, and relevant policies including the National Policy on Protection and Assistance to Trafficked Persons, which is referred to as the National Policy, and the Guidelines on National Referral Mechanism for Protection and Assistance to Trafficked Persons in Nigeria, otherwise known as the Guidelines, Referral Guidelines. It, however, appears that despite all these legislations, policies, guidelines, agencies, the protection and support impacts for victims are very minimal, or in some cases, non-existent. This is according to PBS News. Don't change the dial. We'll be right back, but listen to PBS and hear what they have to say about this.
To the site, thousands of refugees afloat on the Mediterranean, trying to cross into Europe. In recent years, a growing number of Nigerians have joined this migration. In fact, Nigeria is now one of the most dangerous places for young people who often fall into the hands of human traffickers. William Brangham recently traveled to Benin City in Nigeria to see what's driving so many young people to set off on this desperate journey.
This is Evelyn here.
Yes, this is Evelyn.
She has such a nice smile.
The story of modern-day human trafficking often begins in neighborhoods like this in rural Nigeria. Places where young people, like Joy Ogagbon's daughter, Evelyn, dream of a better life for their families and give up everything to try and find it. A year ago, Evelyn was a happy and ambitious student finishing her last year of high school, but then she disappeared without warning. Days passed before her brother Stanley's phone rang.
I was shocked to see Libya number. Who is this? Say it's Evelyn. Evelyn, what are you doing in Libya?
Evelyn had joined thousands of other Nigerians who traversed the Sahara Desert to reach Libya, where they crowd into boats to cross the Mediterranean into Europe. But, like nearly 1 million other migrants, Evelyn got stuck in Libya, apparently held captive by those she'd paid to take her across. Joy Ogagbon demanded that the captors return her daughter.
The woman said no, agreement, come back. Unless we go give her 750,000. I say, I don't have that kind of money.
Ogagbon couldn't come up with the roughly $2,000. They haven't heard from Evelyn since.
Nigeria is one of the top countries in Africa as far as the number of people who try to leave here to go find a different life up in Europe. And Edo State, which is where we are right now, accounts for the vast majority of Nigerians leaving the country. Almost half the people who depart come from right here.
While Nigeria makes a lot of money from oil, corruption, poverty, and high unemployment have sent young people looking for opportunities elsewhere for years. The money those migrants send back helps their families build houses and buy cars, propping up the local economy and fueling the cycle of more migration. This young man, he prefers to be known only as Amos, was told he could find work easily in Europe. At the time, Amos's life wasn't bad. His family lived in a large home, he took vacations with friends, he had a girlfriend, and he was going to school to become a nurse. But he says the smugglers promised him an easy journey.
Told me in 2-3 weeks' time that I will be in Europe.
In 2 to 3 weeks' time. You give us the money, and in 2 weeks we'll put you in Europe.
Yes.
It's embedded in the cultural fabric in that part of the country that people migrate.
Franz Celestine is Deputy Chief of Mission of the UN's Migration Agency in Nigeria. He says the cultural pressure to go abroad and find a new life, like here in Italy, is a powerful force on young Nigerians.
It's a source of pride to say that I have 2 kids in Atlanta, or I have a son in London, I have a daughter in Geneva. And because of that then put the pressure on the next family to send their son or daughter to those countries.
But as many find out, the journey to Europe is often much harder than advertised. Immigration crackdowns in Europe and tighter controls on visas are now sending people on this dangerous path. Those caught on the Mediterranean are often sent back to detention centers in Libya, where conditions are bleak. Amos spent 2 weeks crossing the Sahara, most without food or water. They became so dehydrated, he said he and others resorted to drinking their own urine. Once in Libya, his smugglers betrayed him, selling him off in a slave market, much like this one seen in video obtained by CNN.
Big strong boys for farm work, he says. 400. 700.
I spent more than a week in that place because I was sold out to someone.
He says he was bought and sold 3 times and ended up in a cell where he was beaten with a pipe. He was told his freedom could be bought for about $1,100.
So I was asked to call my parents to send money so that they will release me. They told me to tell my parents to send 400,000 to release me. So, which I did. I called my mother.
Amos's mother, back home in Benin City, was horrified. She hastily sold the family home to pay the ransom for her son. That's it behind the gate. Amos was let go, but then got kidnapped again. During a final melee, he was shot in the arm. Some of the bullet is still lodged in his elbow. He can't afford surgery to get it fixed.
Can you bend it this way?
Just like this.
That's it?
Yes.
So you really cannot use your arm?
No.
And forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us.
Many of the women who attempt this journey are forced into doing sex work. We visited this Catholic shelter where several women have returned from Libya. This woman in the tan scarf asked that we not use her name and hide her identity. She left home last year after being promised a fashion job in Europe. But when she arrived in Libya, she discovered there were other plans for her.
I'll be begging the man.
I was begging the man. He should please. Even if it is housework, he should find me work, so I don't have to go to a prostitution house. The man will say no, and he'll be beating me every morning.
She resisted and says she was raped.
I was raped when I was going to Tripoli.
I was raped when I was going to Tripoli by some Arabs. Since that time, I was pregnant.
I'm very sorry.
She said she hadn't yet told her family she was back in Nigeria. The UN's Migration Agency flew more than 2,000 Nigerians home last December. That's more than double the number in all of 2016. More than 6,700 were returned from Libya in 2017. But far more are setting out than are being returned. This man has helped smuggle people on that journey. He says he's helped over a dozen get through Libya and into Europe. He showed me pictures of people he says he's helped land in Italy and Spain. Despite what we heard from nearly every migrant we spoke to, he claims everyone knows the risks.
I said, the journey is bad. The journey is not good. Out of 100, only 10 survive it. I saw it with my eye. You will know.
So you knew hundreds were going and only a few make it?
A few.
He also says that almost all women will end up doing sex work.
90% of them do sex work.
90% of them
90%, yes. They are doing it.
And you explain that completely to them before they begin the journey?
Yes.
Do the parents know that their daughters will end up doing sex work?
Not all parents. Some know.
Does knowing how hard the journey is, how dangerous it is for people, make you feel like maybe I shouldn't be doing this job?
You see, they rather go and die in Libya than to remain here suffering, doing nothing.
But it's not money alone that compels migrants to stay on this risky path. Traffickers often demand young people undergo this unique ritual before they leave. Aziza is a juju priest in Benin City. Juju is a spiritual practice common in West Africa. For a fee, Aziza demonstrated the protective blessing he performs on migrants who are about to go.
To cross that big river, that river is very bad.
The ocean.
The ocean. There is many spirits in that ocean.
But anti-trafficking groups say the rituals often serve another purpose, to threaten the young people that if they run from their smugglers, they'll be cursed and will suffer terribly.
People generally believe that there's power in this. They believe.
It's just a tool of coercion.
Exactly. Just a tool of coercion. They fear that if they run away, something will happen to them.
Roland Wonha runs a local nonprofit that's been sounding the alarm about trafficking. His group, Idia Renaissance, tries to reach vulnerable kids and teach them skills that they can use to earn a living here in Nigeria. But he says it's hard to combat the pull of Europe, especially in the digital age.
We live in a society where we have become very westernized. We see a lot through the media, the social media, especially now. Everyone has access to Facebook. It creates a general feeling that once you arrive the Western world, everything is good, everything is perfect.
Despite all their efforts to stop them, young Nigerians continue to leave the country by the truckload. Some make it, most do not. Some are never heard from again.
Okay.
A year later, Evelyn Ogagbon is still missing.
I'm looking for my daughter, yes.
Every time her mother, Joy, hears a rumor that more young people are being returned, she goes to the drop-off spot, hoping today will be the day Evelyn comes home. There's an expression in Nigeria that says, "It is better to lose your child than for your child to be missing." It's an expression of the anguish and the worry that thousands of parents like Joy have to endure every day. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm William Brangham in Benin City, Nigeria.
Okay, welcome back. If you missed our previous shows, please visit www.africa35. Did you know that every 30 seconds someone is being trafficked somewhere around the world? Violence or coercion is not needed for trafficking children. All that is required is to expose the children to exploitative conditions, and that will constitute trafficking. Trafficking for sexual exploitation gets much attention. However, most people are trafficked into labor exploitation. Many people who fall victim of trafficking want to escape poverty, improve their lives, and support their families. Often they get an offer of a well-paid job abroad or in another region. Often they borrow money from their traffickers in advance to pay for arranging the job, travel, and accommodation. Unfortunately, when they arrive, they find that the work they applied for does not exist, or the conditions are completely different. But it's too late. Their documents are often taken away from them, and they are forced to work until their debt is paid. Have a listen to this message, courtesy the EU Parliament.
Years old. I have a decent education. I'm physically fit. How could this happen to me, sort of thing? And the guy pulled up next to me in a car, quite an expensive car. He said that as well as working, he'd give me somewhere to stay. We were working up to 15 hours a day. I've seen people attacked with work tools, with spades, with pickaxes. It's really, really difficult for people to understand that it could happen to anybody.
Human trafficking is the exploitation of a person against their will by use of force. It's one of the fastest growing crimes in the world. 15,846 victims were registered in the EU between 2013 and 2014. Trafficked for sexual exploitation, labour, organs and domestic servitude. Most are women and girls. More than half are under 25. In 2011, the EU adopted a directive aimed at the prevention of human trafficking, effectively prosecuting criminals and better protecting the victims.
Cross-border policing, joint investigative teams and the work of Europol are all essential. That is not enough. We must continue to raise the issue, educate the people to see the signs and report those signs to make sure that we can fight these crimes together, which are cross-border and very complex by their very nature.
With the migration crisis ongoing, Parliament continues to prioritise the fight against human trafficking.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on board the flight that takes you from stricken to straightened. We are seconds from takeoff. We ask that you please fasten your earpiece into your eardrum and please log on to africabusinessradio.com to avoid being distracted. Thank you for choosing Africa Business Radio. Enjoy this cerebral journey. You're listening to Africa Business Radio, where you get up-to-date insights on the Africa business landscape. Log on to www.africabusinessradio.com. Your favorite shows are available as podcasts. Download them on our website and mobile app. Africa Business Radio, towards a profitable Africa.
Through the ball with Red Tape Africa. Follow us on all social media at Red Tape Africa and tweet at us using the hashtag Red Tape Africa. Red Tape Africa. Economic policy impact in plain English.
Gentlemen, welcome on board the flight that takes you from stricken to straightened. We are seconds from takeoff. We ask that you please fasten your earpiece into your eardrum and please log on to africabusinessradio.com to avoid being distracted. Thank you for choosing Africa Business Radio. Enjoy this cerebral journey. You're listening to Africa Business Radio, where you get up-to-date insights on the Africa business landscape. Log on to www.africabusinessradio.com. Your favorite shows are available as podcasts. Download them on our website and mobile app. Africa Business Radio, towards a profitable Africa.
From the moment you wake up to the moment you go back to sleep, technology is everywhere. It is changing everything so fast that many no longer remember what it is like to live without technology. You might even say the whole world is mad about tech. Welcome to 989 Tech Talk, only on Africa Business Radio.
Okay. Welcome to 989 Tech Talk. This show is in affiliation with Africa Business Radio, your #1 online radio station. 989 Tech Talk covers all things tech in the agricultural space. My name is Michelle. I am mad about tech. No.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on board the flight that takes you from Stratton to Straightened. We are seconds from takeoff. We ask that you please fasten your earpiece into your eardrum and please log on to africabusinessradio.com to avoid being distracted. Thank you for choosing Africa Business Radio. Enjoy this cerebral journey. You're listening to Africa Business Radio, where you get up-to-date insights on the Africa business landscape. Log on to www.africabusinessradio.com. Your favorite shows are available as podcasts. Download them on our website and mobile app. Africa Business Radio, towards a profitable Africa.
Wake up! The revolution is here. The future has just been uploaded on the cloud. To download it into your consciousness, listen to 989 Tech Talk, only on Africa Business Radio. 989 Tech Talk with Michelle.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on board the flight that takes you from Stratton to Straightened. We are seconds from takeoff. We ask that you please fasten your earpiece into your eardrum and please log on to africabusinessradio.com to avoid being distracted. Thank you for choosing Africa Business Radio. Enjoy this cerebral journey.
Heard that. Well, we're going to go on a break now, but the show continues after the break. During the break, you should now hear what Mary, a social worker and a survivor of human trafficking, has to say about her ordeal. This is courtesy Soul Pancake. You may want to get a box of tissues, as it is real and mind-wrenching. We'll be right back.
So as a junior in my undergrad degree of social work, I had some electives I needed to fill. There was a class open called Human Trafficking. I knew a little bit about trafficking. It's something that happens to foreign nationals. It's not but a few weeks into the semester, and we're starting to lay down kind of the foundations of what exploitation looks like. The small of it is it's the exploitation of another human being for labor, which includes sex, using these three key words: force, fraud, and coercion. And there was something particular about the way that the professor talked about the ways that traffickers use these types of techniques or mechanisms to get someone to comply. And many of those that were talked about were actual experiences of mine, and that I had experienced exploitation, what people commonly refer to now as human trafficking. When you're in the relationship and you're in that space, it's often really difficult to see what's happening. And when this professor in particular started to lay out this language around forced no food, lack of sleep, being on the move consistently, the light bulb started to come on. Because I could literally start to recall those things as the professor was laying those things out. I remember when I was kept up for days, 3 or 4 days at a time. I remember what it felt like to not have food or to be cut off from basic needs that would debilitate me from leaving or running or fleeing or calling law enforcement. Life was a little rough as a young person. Came from a divorced family. I had alcoholism pretty rampant in my family, some physical abuse that was going on in the household, and I found substances to ease that pain. Well, there came a day when those substances no longer worked, and when that started to happen, I couldn't stop. I was showing up at drug houses. I was showing up in places where I had no business being as a young individual. And I was starting to date and be in intimate relationships with other people who were either selling or dealing. And that's when the things started to shift. I was told that I was going to need to do some things in order to pay off a drug debt. Once that drug debt was paid off, then it was, you'll need to do this just to continue to stay alive. Life got really, really shitty really quick. So I end up in this house in Southside Chicago with about 13 other girls working 15, 16 hours a day in the middle of Chicago snowstorms, putting restaurant flyers on people's doors. In one of the days where we were putting flyers on doors, I stole someone's mail out of their mailbox to steal a stamp to try to get a letter to my parents to let them know where I was. I don't know how many days it was from the time I put that letter until the time I was able to leave. But there came this moment where I'm coming down the stairs in this house and the phone rings and the gentleman who was keeping us answers, and it's my mom on the phone. He hands the phone to me and she tells me to walk out the front door. And don't look back and just walk. And I never looked back. I absolutely never looked back. And I knew that I had a long road ahead of me, but anything was better than what I had just been through. And I knew that I needed to sit down and heal for a bit. So that following year, in 2006, I got this harebrained idea that I need to go to college. And I do. I sign up for college. I come home. I tell my mom it's like this most amazing moment in my life. I'm going to go. And I start my journey in academics. It's funny to think about how language changes your view of yourself and how language can set you free in a lot of ways. Not knowing or having the concept or the analysis to understand what you've experienced and be given that was its own set of freedom outside of fleeing from my exploitation in 2005. So there was a big gift and there was a big shift, and I did not want another young girl to think that she was bad, she was deviant, she was making bad decisions, that she just got in a bad relationship. I wanted young women and people in general to know that it's not okay. It's not okay for people to exploit you. So I've used that as my platform. Here I am, 7 years later, working in this anti-trafficking movement. I teach now the same human trafficking class that I sat in, which is super crazy, and being able to give that knowledge back to students. But also there's this weird space of, I wonder if someone else is in this room who may have experienced exploitation and will come to that realization in the framework that I may have or that I did. Trafficking looks different for everybody, and it's easily misidentified and it's easily skewed, and so I feel like my journey has led me here to be the voice and to be able to share that, and again in a light that's authentic and real.
Welcome back to the show. I hope you reflected a bit on the discussion so far. Well, if you're just joining us, you can catch up on all the episodes of Stricken at www.africabusinessradio.com/podcast/certified. You can enjoy all the podcasts at your most convenient time without distractions. You've heard it all. But to refresh your memory about the drive that lures these victims into the hands of the traffickers and the horror they face, perhaps we should listen to Ida's story to kind of wrap up our discussion on human trafficking. This is courtesy Comic Relief Red Nose Day. Listen to Ida.
All young girls have dreams, don't they? I worked hard at school so that when I grew up, I could get a good job and help my parents. Buy them all the things they never had, the things they needed. And I could have a different life. A better life.
Yes, everything is fine. Yes, a job. I'll send you some money soon. Tell Papa not to worry. Where do I live? Oh, it's a nice flat. I share with some other girls.
Things were hard at home, but we had neighbors whose children were sending money back from England. So when someone my uncle knew said he could help get me in an office or a restaurant, my parents said yes. Of course, there was a price. They had to borrow the money.
Yes, I'm getting help with my English. Yes, everyone is very friendly.
There were 12 of us in a van. For 2 or maybe 3 days. We ran out of water long before we stopped. There was a baby crying. And they said to the mother, "We throw you both in the sea." I just prayed for it to be over.
No boyfriends, no time for that.
They said, "Your parents owe us a lot of money, and you work hard to pay it back. If you don't, we will kill them." They take my passport. And then it started. 12, 15 men every day.
Yes, I'm kept very busy.
I got ill, but still, always the men, they come. Then one day they are moving, 3 of us in a van, and it broke down. They are walking us along the street, and I just ran. They caught me, but I fell to the ground and I started screaming. And people came to help. And then someone called the police. They arranged for me to go to a refuge that helps trafficked women. I'm beginning to get better. My English is getting better. And I'm helping some of the other girls. Most of all, we are safe. But I know that there are others still trapped, like I was. And other girls in the same situation can be helped too, given hope that things can change. Will you give them that hope?
Well, to help you weave all this together, You should listen to all our other episodes on PTSD, from domestic abuse to child abuse, and now to human trafficking. The reason is because the perpetrators of this evil were once children. They grew up in a household, and then they became the adults, the kind of adults who can perpetrate this kind of act against other human beings without even blinking. And again, this battle is not for the government agencies or organizations alone. The traffickers, they trafficked their families, the government, and all of those professionals like social workers, lawyers, police, psychotherapists, psychiatrists, doctors, clinical psychologists, bankers, and all the rest of them. We're all humans, and we're all responsible for this nightmare by complicity, either by not acting adequately, including enforcement, or outrightly ignoring the epidemic, or even, conniving with the perpetrators to succeed in this act. Now, acting adequately will start from creating and sustaining an enabling environment in which, in the affected countries, for everyone to succeed, and where there is dignity of labor and support to the less privileged. We should also ensure effective and swift enforcement and justice when it comes to matters of this nature, and indeed all other matters. You should consider seeking competent legal advice and support, among other measures, for a more personalized assessment if you feel the need to. Remember, the above is not for you to be paranoid. It is for you to be fairly equipped, because you are not alone and you are worth it. Until next time, this is Stricken. Thank you for listening.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on board the flight that takes you from Stricken to Straightened. We are seconds from takeoff. We ask that you please fasten your earpiece into your eardrum and please log on to africabusinessradio.com to avoid being distracted. Thank you for choosing Africa Business Radio. Enjoy this cerebral journey.
Okay. Welcome to 989 Tech Talk. This show is an affiliation with Africa Business Radio, your #1 online radio station. 989 Tech Talk covers all things tech in the agricultural space. My name is Michelle. I am mad about tech. No.
You're listening to Africa Business Radio, where you get up-to-date insights on the Africa business landscape. Log on to www.africabusinessradio.com. Your favorite shows are available as podcasts. Download them on our website and mobile app. Africa Business Radio, towards a profitable Africa.
Doing business in Africa can be complicated. Politicians sometimes create circumstances that hurt businesses and consumers, and then they hide behind a wall of to avoid taking responsibility for their bad economic policies. On Red Tape Africa, we slice through the jargon, drawing a direct link between government actions and their effects on businesses across the continent. Red Tape Africa is where we break down the jargons of business and economic policies in plain English so that you can understand how the impacts on your business and on you. Join us every Tuesday and Thursday on Africa Business Radio as we deliver an impartial verdict on these policies. Red Tape Africa, economic policy impact in plain English.